Hi guys, it's your Pontiff ArchieLuxury on the Paul Pluta channel. Today guys, I'm doing paid review 21QA93, and this is a question about pre-owned markup, and I'm going to get into this in a minute. Quick wristwatch check. I'm wearing Rolex Milgauss, the Z Blue. Absolutely love this watch. Absolutely love it. Okay, guys, this is a very good question here. Archie, not sure whether this question is easy to answer or pure speculation. I'm interested in making an offer on a pre-owned Lange. What kind of markup would you expect on a pre-owned piece like this? 20 or 30%? I don't want to insult the guy with a lowball offer. Thanks, Steve. Very interesting question. Very interesting indeed. And what I find interesting about this is he's asking, what is the margin on these pieces? And I think the best way to look at this is to do a bit of reverse engineering. Reverse engineering, because if we look at this here on a face issue, it's very tricky to get this exact thing here. And I've got to be totally honest with you. You've got to reverse engineer this, and you've got to really say, well, let's have a look at it and see what sort of margin would you expect. And I got to be totally honest with you. The margin on Rolex, which Rolex is really quick flick, is, I would say a dealer would be happy with 10%. Often it's less than 10%. I'd say it's somewhere between 5 and 9% on a lot of quick moving Rolex. Now, the interesting thing is, if you go to a dealer and say, hey, I want to sell, for example, say a Milgauss, this is a very quick flick. He can buy it. He's normally not going to price gouge it much, because he can't. The supply and demand, the market forces, and he'll try and I would say he'd try and put on their 12.5% margin, then allows a bit of wriggle room, etc. He'd probably take about 9% profit on it. I'll give you an example. Often with harder to move pieces, they will absolutely slaughter you. I'm talking harder to move. I'm talking Breguets, Jaeger-LeCoultre. I'm talking Pams. I'm talking Breitlings. I'm talking good stuff, but just a bit harder to move. And even on things like, say, a Patek Philippe, it's going to be something that's not going to sell as quickly as, say, a Milgauss. Now, what sort of margin would they be getting? Now, it depends. Is the item a consignment piece, or is it a piece of stock he has bought? To give you an idea, I would say on pieces around the $20,000 mark that are a bit harder to move, like Patek, Lange, those quality pieces, very much quality, but, a little bit not as easy to move as, say, a sports Rolex. I generally think if it's a consignment piece, the margin could be as low as 10 to 15%. But if it's a piece the dealer has bought outright, he's probably looking at making, I'd say, somewhere from about 12.5 to 20%, generally speaking. So it's a tricky thing. I'll give you a case in point. I know of a watch that just sold last week. It was a ArchieLuxury Reverso, ArchieLuxury Polaris chronograph. It was relatively new piece. A guy sold it to a dealer for 8.8. This is Aussie dollars. And the dealer sold it for, he had it listed for 10,850. He sold it for 10.5. So how much did he make? Well, it's more so than the margin. What he's done is he said, right, I want to make, he'd have to pay a little bit of tax, GST. He'd pay GST on the difference between the buy and the sell. He'd probably have credit card. Most people don't have cash. They pay by credit card. He'd have a 2% processing fee, approximately. So I would say, generally speaking, that's the kind of deal a dealer will do. So he will take a bit off. What I find the best way to make offers and to come in, you've got to really do your homework. A lot of dealers I know, they will hold out until it snows on their price. They set the price and that is it. Now, the best way to gauge this is to see if you can work out how long has the dealer had the piece. Obviously, a piece that has been there for 6 months, the dealer's going to have more incentive to discount than a piece that just arrived. The next thing is, a bird in the hand is two in the bush. If you offer and the dealer can make a profit, he's more inclined to do it. I know a lot of people make ridiculously low offers, and it's really quite insulting. A lot of people will, I know people on Rolex, this is talking to a couple dealers I know, say a Milgauss in Australia, this sort of thing here would be about 13,000 Aussie. They'll come in and say, how much for cash? I'll give you 7. And the dealer has not bought it. He wish he could buy them for that price. It's just ridiculous. People have no idea. So I find the best strategy to say to a dealer is, hey, I think this is the key. You ready to buy? You've got to go in professionally and basically say, hey, I'm ready to buy. What's the best you can do for me? I'm ready to buy today. What's the best you can do for me if your figure is good? We don't want to bluff them out. When you start making offers, if you're going to lowball, the dealer's just going to get the shits very quickly. You better to ask the dealer and say, hey, you've got to do your homework. This is the whole thing. You've really got to do your homework on that model, in that metal color, whether it's white gold, rose gold, whatever metal it is, or steel. The dial color, you've got to do your homework and see what they are selling for. You've got to have a basis. The funny thing is, this particular customer here, I'm not sure he really did his homework, because what he did is he sent me a link to this watch, which was a Richard Mille, okay? It was a Richard Mille. And what happened was, so I think it was around the mid-20s, and he came back and said he found one. He found one. He said to me, he found one. So this was a mid-20s one, and he says to me, he found, thanks, Arch. I found another dealer, not on Chrono, asking 16.7 for a Richard Lange. My research on the blah, blah, blah. So he then got a further 10% off. Now, the problem is, this guy hasn't told me the model numbers, okay? Because the funny thing is with Lange's is, I know with Lange ones, you can have an earlier one, and which was a 38.5 mil. Then they had a revised movement, and for some reason that one is actually worth a fair bit more. And they're still Lung A1s, but there's certain, the newer one is worth a bit more. So in this case here, I think he might be referring to a different model of Richard Lange. So I got a feeling it might be two different models. But, you know, if he's found one that's more to his price point and he got a discount and he's happy, well, that's all that does matter. So generally speaking, I would say on Rolex itself there, the margins I would say would be between 5 and 10%. Okay. On non-Rolex itself there, the dealer, it depends whether it's a consignment piece or it is a piece the dealer has bought outright. If it's a consignment piece, the dealer generally he would charge 10 to 15% fee for selling it on your behalf there. The dealer is that's generally what the dealer would want. And the dealer themselves there, they if they bought it outright, they would try and they would need more money to justify buying a softer item. Now, looking at some Patek deals that I know have gone down, generally speaking, say a 5196, they would be paying low 20s, selling for mid 20s. And that gives, so basically a 5196, box papers, this is Aussie dollars, they generally pay about 20, and they would list it for 24,750, 25,000, and they'd take 23.5 to 23,750 if on credit card, depending on the processing fees. Often what happens is when a dealer sells this type of piece, the customer doesn't have any money. He wants to trade things. So the dealer is able to really screw over any trades that come in. This is how the dealers make their money, is because nobody has any money. They want to buy expensive pieces and they trade back pieces. And that's kind of for that type of easiness of a completed sale, you're paying a premium. So you're going to lose margin. So I got to be honest with you there. I would generally say, now the other thing is too, I quoted you on that Patek, the 5196. The dealer would pay 20, he'd list it for 24,750, and he'd take 23.5 cash, 23,750 on a card. So that margin there, that's kind of 15% sort of margin there. It's quite okay. Also, if the piece had a fault, like say for example it needed a new strap, it'd be 20 minus the price of a new strap, or any flaw. If it didn't have a box or it didn't have papers, that can really hurt the piece. Naked pieces on certain pieces can hurt it up to 10%, which is phenomenal, really. But it's papers is getting more and more important. So I suppose, what is the dealer making? You've really got to do your homework. Research that watch and see if it's fair or not. If it's been sitting there for a long time, he's obviously going to be more incentivized to do cash. You've got to come in and say, I'm ready to buy today at the right price. what can you don't want to expose your hands. As soon as you go in there for low ball, he's just gonna wipe his hands off you and say, see you later. He's gonna get the shits. Rightly so. So you've got to come in and say, what could you do for me? I want to buy it. You got to be prepared to pull the trigger, because there's nothing worse than a prick teaser. A prick teaser who does the deal and says, you know what? Let me sleep on it. I'll ask the wife about it. I mean, what the hell? Don't do prick teasing. Prick teasing is dealers hate that. They've gone through all the hassle and you're going to think about it? What the hell? So I would say the margin on pieces here, obviously the dealer would try and make as much as possible. To give you an idea, that dealer himself who bought the ArchieLuxury for 8.8, another dealer offered in the 6s, which is savage, absolutely savage. And don't forget, dealers aren't necessarily your friends. They make money buying low, selling high. That's the general premise of their business model. So I would say it depends on the piece, but I'd say on Rolex, 5 to 10%. On non-Rolex, I'd be saying 12.5 to 20%. That's the kind of margin I think they would make on the piece. And obviously, if they could get it as cheap as possible, that they're quick to pounce. They're very, very quick to pounce. And admittedly, dealers get a lot of questions. How much you give me for this? And a lot of people are just price checking. And dealers get it. But I mean, that's the nature of the business. That's the nature. You want to play. You want to be in the kitchen. You got to be prepared to put up with the heat, don't you? This is kind of how it goes there. So that's a bit of reverse engineering. There you go. That's what I think you could look at the margins there. Tell me what you think, guys. Put some comments down below. Guys, like, subscribe, and tell your friends. And remember, I can't survive on Google Ads alone. I desperately need paid reviews to survive on YouTube. $50 helps me immensely. Without punters getting reviews done, I can't survive. I can't survive, guys. It's very hard to survive if I don't have some good punters getting reviews done. $50. I'll tell you what I think of your collection. I'll give you the good, the bad, the ugly. $50. Also, you could sponsor me on Patreon. It allows you to sponsor me as little as $1 a month, and it just helps me make content. I'm ArchieLuxury, and I will see you in the next one. Hi guys, ArchieLuxury, and who do I recommend in America? In America, who do I recommend for quality pre-owned wristwatches? David SW, David SW, David SW. Go to davidsw.com. He is the best, the greatest pre-owned dealer in all of the United States of America. David SW, David SW, David SW. Hey guys, ArchieLuxury. Who do I recommend for watches in Brisbane and Sydney? Vintage Watch Co. That's correct. Vintage Watch Co. in Brisbane Arcade in Brisbane and the Strand Arcade in Sydney. Vintage Watch Co. Brisbane and Sydney. Ronnie, I've known him since the late 90s. Ronnie is a top bloke. Luke is a great guy. Vintage Watch Co. That is who I recommend in Australia. Check out Vintage Watch Co. and the guys' amazing range of watches. They also do service and repairs. Vintage Watch Co. That is where the pontiff goes. You know, some of my Pateks came from Vintage Watch Co. That's right, guys. Vintage Watch Co.